Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads for this week's live stream and Q&A. Hopefully, you're all having a great Tuesday so far. We're going to get into the latest and greatest in Star Wars news, as well as some other topics, as you might see in the title and description of this video. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. We do these streams every single Tuesday, so make sure you join us. If you're watching on replay, join us next Tuesday for the next one. We will be live around 7 o'clock Pacific time every single week. This week, we are going to be doing a little bit shorter stream. We have a hard cutoff here. So we will be going about an hour and 20-ish minutes, hour and 15 minutes. So make sure you send in your questions now. Make sure you send them into the chat. It is first come, first serve. We do kind of skip around to some people who might not have gotten a chance if you are a little bit lower in the chat, because we do get a lot of block questions, but we will try to get to everybody. Might not. We usually run out of time, and that's with our 2-hour stream. So make sure you send it in to the chat. As always, super chat is the best way to guarantee you get a chat on the stream tonight. Other than that, you can join our Patreon and YouTube membership programs. If you are of the $5 tier or higher, you do get priority chat access. So make sure you check out those. They have a lot of other great perks. Some of the higher tiers have exclusive streams as well. So make sure you check that out. There might be some type of tier or some type of perk that is right for you. And we'd love to have you on board with those programs. If you are a YouTube member of that tier or a Patreon member of that tier, send us your Patreon. If you're on Patreon, send us your YouTube handle so we know who is of that priority chat tier. As well as your other option is to comment on the link to this video or this stream, which will be exclusive to those members and higher on Patreon. If you're on YouTube memberships, it should already give you the option to send in your priority chats. So make sure you check out both of those options. We also have a new stream coming out tomorrow. We're going to be doing the High Republic recap, retrospective review, rankings. We're going to talk about everything High Republic, as well as spoilers for Trials of the Jedi. So if you have read the High Republic and you finished it up, or maybe you have interest in getting into it, you don't mind some spoilers, we're going to talk about everything to do with the High Republic tomorrow. So make sure you join us for that. And if you do have High Republic related questions for tonight's stream, and they are spoiler filled, save them for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be kind of our spoilery cutoff for High Republic stuff. And then after that, we can talk spoilers in other streams as well. But we're going to talk about the High Republic and compare it to past multimedia initiatives, past publishing initiatives like New Jedi Order, talk about the successes, the failures, the way we would redo it, the way we'd restructure it, all the things that we liked and disliked about the High Republic. So make sure you join us for that as well. All right, let's get into tonight's first topic here. And again, for about 3 weeks in a row, basically no Star Wars news. But we did have one fairly big semi-official story come out this week, and that's the Ahsoka season 2 directors were revealed, or at least 4 of them were revealed. We did have an announcement from independent talent on Star Wars Leaks saying that the 4 directors who are confirmed for Ahsoka season 2 are Dave Filoni, as to be expected, since he wrote the show and is the showrunner on Ahsoka. Bryce Dallas Howard, who has never directed Ahsoka before, but has directed pretty much every other Star Wars show outside of Andor, and has been a big part of this New Republic universe. So that one makes sense. Jennifer Getzinger and Anders Engstrom. Anders Engstrom is new to Star Wars. He's never directed Star Wars, but he has directed episodes of Percy Jackson and the Olympians on Disney Plus, and also directed the show C on Apple TV. As for Jennifer Getzinger, she did direct episodes of Ahsoka before. She directed episode 6 previously, so she is a returning director to the show. Sonic, you hear these 4 names. Obviously, 2 of them make a lot of sense. One other returning director, but then you have this new one in Anders Angstrom. What are your thoughts on the new directors that are taking over for Ahsoka season 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's about time that we had Bryce show up. I think as far as, like, Ahsoka season 1 went, it had, like, a bit of a weirdish start. It was fine. It was still pretty entertaining, but then it really got going in those middle episodes and then kinda just tapered off, right? So, this is definitely a show that I think needs sort of those people that have that experience with the Mandoverse. Right now, this is a show that's kind of been trying to exist off the fact that it is a Rebels season 5 sort of, but the season 5 is whole backstory that we haven't seen with Sabine and Ahsoka's full story, and then we're kinda jumping into this bigger Thrawn conflict and everything that's sort of lending an heir to the Empire while still dealing with all the loose plot lines of, like, Ezra returning back to the galaxy and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was still a good show. I still have a lot of really warm feelings about it, but I think this is just another example of them really trying to step up to the plate and really make sure that, like, every Filoni season 2 that he's kind of ever done, it just gets better. It always kinda takes another step forward. It kinda really stabilizes some of those early swings, that don't necessarily feel terrible in any ways, but don't necessarily sit as right. Kinda get jettisoned away, you double down on what works, bring in things that actually will continue to flesh out everything else. So, looking forward to that, and I think, yeah, I know Bryce technically is on a downturn from Heroes for Hire, but I can't really blame her on that. That's really the script. That's how Mando season three's whole plotting was. It just was very uneven. A lot of things, like I've been saying, even if you don't necessarily change the big plot points, even if you keep Grogu's whole return in, season 3 or, leave it as it is in Book of Boba Fett, if you reorganize some of those plot elements and put, the pirate stuff at the beginning and then kind of run us all the way continuously through to the Mandalore plotline, I think that would have set a lot better. Because then you've got this quasi, over the top, like, campy and, I guess it's sort of like some, looking at detective, like, storytelling, but it takes away from, like, "Oh, what is gonna go on? Are we gonna get all the Mandalorians recruited, reunited under Bo-Katan that's kinda, dealing with all these big changes in her life?" You, like, questioning how much of her past she has to acknowledge, how much of the past that she needs to, like, embrace because of not just Din Djarin, but, all the things that she's experienced by with them. And all those things I think Bryce really wanted to do, but they only gave her truly like 10 minutes, and we've seen how she's handled Bo-Katan very, very well, so I wouldn't be surprised if Bo-Katan has some sort of appearance in Ahsoka season 2. I think she's handled female characters really well every time she's kinda gotten a chance to really lead as a director, so obviously, it from the way that we've been hearing things about Ahsoka season 2, we're definitely probably dealing with our main galaxy and not just everything happening on Peridea. So if you can focus on those names that, we've seen in Mando season 3 and Ahsoka season 1, maybe even bring in some skeleton crew and stuff like that, I think we can see some really great, great direction from her, and as long as the writing is a little bit more linear and a little bit more clear, I think she's gonna nail it, and frankly, as long as she does good to great on this next episode, I think she's ready for a feature film. I think she has been so well workshopped in this Lucasfilm mold. She's still developed outside as an actor, outside with other projects that she's been working on. She's had a very, very strong career in the last 5, 10 years. She's a interesting pick overall because of her father, but because of the things that she's done with, like, Black Mirror and everything else. So, um, I'm excited. I think she's obviously gonna be the crown jewel of that. Who's the other director that you mentioned? Say,
Anders Angstrom and Jennifer Getzinger.
yeah, okay, let me see. I feel like I don't know. Did Angstrom do the Percy Jackson episodes? I feel like
He
that's
did
familiar.
he did Percy
Yeah,
Jackson, and he did an Apple TV show called C.
see, okay, that's the one with Momoa. Okay, alright. Yeah, so clearly, someone can handle a very high budget, a very polished looking show. I wouldn't say Percy Jackson's the most polished, but I will say that even people who've never really loved a show like See, which was like kind of like one of the first flagship shows of Apple TV Plus, they would always give huge compliments about how visually stunning it looked, how visceral the action could be, and all that. So that's good. I mean, we already saw the choreography kind of improve definitely by the end of Ahsoka, but I would definitely want to see a little bit more like detail and intricacy, especially with some of the weirder concept art that we've been throwing out, so maybe this is a good pick there. So, I'm excited. I don't really know much about Jennifer Hetzinger and what she's done, but yeah, I'm excited for whatever these guys do. It's about time. I think from what I've heard, Hetzinger might have done episode 1 of season 1, or
She did
episode
episode
6.
6.
Yeah, so when they arrive on Peridea, the one that has Sabine kinda going with her turtle friend and finding Ezra, I mean,
It's the
I got a
first
lot of warm
Thrawn
feeling.
episode, yeah.
Yeah, so I got a lot of warm feelings in general from just everything that was happening on Peridea before things kinda slowed down, so that's fine for me. I think the only thing that really matters now, elevate the visuals of the show, bring in even more stronger technical directors, which they have here, continuity with the Mandoverse. It all makes sense to me. I'm pretty excited. I know their budget has definitely been increased quite a bit too in season 2. They've changed locations for where they're filming, so yeah, I think this will only be good. This will allow Filoni to not feel as spread out as he might have been during season 1. But yeah, I liked season 1 a lot. I know there's a lot of critics for it, but again, I'm always confident that a season 2 under Filoni is always gonna be a big step forward, and it's gonna make you forget a lot of those, like, "Oh, that stuff doesn't make as much sense." I still obviously wanna see some repercussions, ramifications for Sabine's choice, what's gonna go on with Galen and everything that's a little bit more heavier and richer and kind of not retcon, but semi-retcons a lot of, like, where we left off in the finale. But, that's it's all to be determined, and as long as all these directors, especially with Filoni as a showrunner, can continue building off of, like, that re-energized Ahsoka that we saw after the World Between Worlds episode, I think we're gonna have a great season on our hands.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, this is a good group of people. Bryce Dallas Howard knows this time period really, really well. She's directed for John Favreau, Dave Filoni tandem before, so I think just chemistry wise, she fits. So I love seeing her return. You're kind of right. Her last few things haven't been the best. Like she directed one of my least favorite episodes of Skeleton Crew, and then to me the worst episode of The Mandalorian altogether. Now with that terrible season 3 episode, but really for direction wise, that doesn't really have anything to do with the script. The stories are done by the writer showrunner. As a TV director, you're much less responsible for the actual storytelling and more so just the craft of making the episode. And so I mean, she's still made some great episodes of TV for The Mandalorian, and I think she'd fit right in with Dave Filoni and his team. Anders Engstrom, I'm pretty excited about. Just he's a TV guy through and through, and a lot of the times when we talk about these directors for TV shows, that when we hear director reveals for Star Wars, a lot of the times it's not sexy names because these are TV people, and it's very different making a TV show than it is making a film. And sometimes you get better, more high quality TV when you hire TV people versus hiring film people. So I think it's nice to see this returning group of TV heavy directors. Even Filoni is a TV guy, So that gives me a lot of confidence in the show. Whereas a lot of other times we've experimented with other film directors, and it hasn't necessarily turned out as well as some of the TV director episodes, right? So I think this is a great choice here. And then Jennifer Getzinger is kind of a TV mercenary as well. She's done episodes in hundreds of TV shows. Like she's like done one in everything. Like I was just looking at her IMDb outside of Ahsoka as well, and she did an episode of The Penguin. She did episodes of Westworld, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Outlander. She's done everything. So I'm another good name to bring back. And it's always great to see somebody return, especially when they directed a really good episode of the show. Because I think episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Ahsoka are really, really great. It's everything else before and after that needs work. And so bringing back somebody who knows and is familiar with the best parts of the show, the high quality Dave Filoni style storytelling, and also directed Thrawn as well. And I thought the best Thrawn episode that we saw was her episode. So if you're bringing back Thrawn and if you're doing more Thrawn stuff, it'd be nice to have somebody who knows how to stage him and make him look at his best and feel at his most powerful. So I think this is a great group of people across the board. Really exciting to hear. I wouldn't be surprised if it's only 4 directors. We've started to see with some of these shows recently, whether it be Andor or whether it be even a Skeleton Crew, the directors lists have been a lot smaller than when Mandalorian originally was getting its directors lists, or when you got the first directors lists announcement for Ahsoka. Like I think 4 people is great. You have 2 people direct two, or each person directs 2 episodes at least. Maybe Filoni directs 3 and one of these people directs 1. It could be something like that, but I think having a smaller, tighter knit group, it allows them to really embrace and dive into the material. Should be a good crew, and I think it sounds pretty great. The leak also did say that either Getzinger or Engstrom is going to be directing with at least one of episodes 2, 3, and 7 from the listings they've seen, and we don't know exactly which episodes are being directed by Filoni and Howard yet, although Dave Filoni did direct episodes 1 and 5 of season 1, so he might be kind of in that similar fashion. I would be shocked if Dave Filoni doesn't direct the first episode. He just does that a lot. He directed the first episode of season 1 of Mandalorian. He's just kind of the opening guy a lot of times, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him direct the beginning and maybe the end of the show. But if there is a big turning point episode that's really steeped in Star Wars lore, like if we get that Mortis episode, if we get that Anakin episode in the middle of the season, again, it'll probably be Dave Filoni who's directing that. He seems like somebody who doesn't like to pass the buck on things that are really important to him in his storytelling, and then he'll pass it off when it's some of the other stuff that's maybe a little bit more filler or get us from place to place. He will maybe give it to somebody else, but he likes to be in full control of those things that are really important for his plots. So pretty exciting. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below about the Ahsoka directors list. We do have a couple comments about this, starting with, let's see here, we have Anthony, YouTube fan, who says, guys, very excited for Ahsoka season 2. I think things are going to get really weird and wild. Yeah, I think so too. I'm hoping so, at least. I'm a little nervous just because the cast is still so big and we're still focusing on Hera and still focusing on Thrawn and all that stuff. I would have loved a pretty exclusive season 2, but I think it will be pretty exciting when we get to the Ahsoka and Anakin and Sabine stuff. That should be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's always gonna be a challenge jumping between those 2 perspectives, especially now that it's gonna be very split off. At least all the Hera stuff that we got in season 1, it ends with her after they jump to Peridia, right? That's the end of the story. You're like, "Okay, we've segued over, we can focus on Peridia." This is gonna be a little bit more of a challenge, yeah, right? Make people feel like they're not confused, that they can really tell the difference between the galaxy, the distance that they've traveled, and what's keeping them apart and all. I think what'll help here will be that we're gonna have Amanda's Fondi's Ezra in the galaxy. We're gonna have him kind of be like, "Okay, I've been gone for a minute. What's going on? What can I do?" Right? I think Hera's already primed to kinda take that heir to the Empire role where she's gonna be the tactician against Thrawn. I mean, she's already had a lot of history with him with Rebels, so uh, I hope that they still give, Akbar some good key moments just because, you wanna honor some of that legacy that he originally had, but also because he unfortunately does go out in a pretty bizarre way in The Last Jedi, so you don't really get to see him be anything other than kind of the meme that he is in episode 6, but it's a trap, right? And like, okay, great. But then the EU made him such a rich, rich, deep character, his history with Tarkin and all the conflicts that he was fighting through all the way through, like, basically the end of the New Jedi Order when he's, like, retired and sick, right? So, I'm not saying we necessarily have to have him be that elevated, that prominent at every single moment, but it would be nice to see him reappear in the show and really have some moments and, be an aide and work hand in hand with Hera while still, giving Hera that very personal connection to Thrawn. So, I think that'll be really fun. And I think just seeing Ezra interact with Jason, maybe start a little bit of training there, understand what Sabine has done for him to return, because they don't really have that, weight really handled quite yet. Even if Ahsoka has let her mostly slide on that, it'd be very interesting to see what Ezra feels about it because he's like, "Oh my god, was this the only way I'd like." I think that can really bring some really rich depth and, like, intrigue to the story that he'll be carrying on his own, and he'll probably be the type of character that's gonna be kind of freelancing in the season, maybe jumping around trying to help Hera out as, like, a field agent. Obviously, we're gonna see Zeb and him reunite, so that's gonna be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some continuity there with Mandalorian Grogu with some of his plot lines, so I'd love to see him almost be the bridge, again, with his name, Bridger, right, as it was between episode 3 and episode 4 with Rebels. I'd love him to be the bridge with all of these, like, these separate stories that are happening in the Mandoverse, really help us establish timelines and all that while you're still letting Hera and the New Republic Defense Fleet story kind of build up and prepared for Thrawn's return, understand a little bit more about Dathomir from not just the witches and all their danger, but also, like, what are their resources? How's maybe, like, the skeleton crew with Atten, which we now know is very close to Dathomir, how does that play in? I think a lot of their story is gonna be more about connecting the pieces, setting the stage, explaining the scale, how much time has passed. Hera will be more the space stuff. Ezra will be more of the grounded stuff, and then everything on Peridia, you don't have to make it too much more complicated in the character dynamics. It's just gonna be more like, let's just get weird and strange, like you're saying, Anthony, YouTube fan. Like we've seen in a little bit of like that serialized, like old like 60s radio announcer voice, like, oh, the adventures on Peridia and all this and that. There's no real action or visuals, right? It's just a bunch of like cut concept art that they're kind of putting together, but you see these weird, strange creatures. They kind of look like strange biomechanical versions of, like, those big, super long-legged animals on Jakku not Jakku, sorry. Um, is it Jakku? No, it's, on Jedha that we see in Jedi Survivor that you can ride. I forget what their name is, but they're but stuff like that, all these weird things, and I mean, I want Peridia to absolutely, absolutely feel like, "Oh my god, we're dealing with a galaxy that is old, that is ancient, that is weird and decrepit in general." So that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'm hoping for. So, yeah, old, decrepit, weird. It'll only help with Balin's storyline, with how strange it's gonna be chasing down the Mortis gods and everything. Yeah, I'm definitely excited as a whole. I'm just looking forward to it in general. I think Weird and Wild is gonna be right for all the stuff that we've established on Peridia, just get deeper into that. But everything with the New Republic, with our main galaxy, like, let's just clean things up, make us a little bit more aware and understanding of what's going on in the galaxy. Set up the underworld, set up everything that needs to be there that maybe Mandalore and Grogu can touch on, but doesn't necessarily have the time.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's such a unique opportunity to have this type of place to explore that it only makes sense to really go all in on it. I understand needing to recap with all the other characters you have in your show, but sometimes the best shows do sacrifice characters for certain seasons and don't really go in on them. I mean, we saw, big ensemble shows like a Game of Thrones sometimes not have a character for the entire season, or they make one or two appearances in a season because you got to focus on the story you're telling. And if the Peridia plotline is such a unique piece of Star Wars, I think it would be a shame to rush out of that just to get back to the Thrawn plot, because it's not like the Thrawn plot was overly well received in the first season. It's not like that was the thing that everybody loved and the Peridia stuff was the stuff that people didn't like. Like, I think overall general interest is much higher for Peridia. What they're doing with Balin, considering he was probably the best character of season one, now you have a new actor playing him, all that type of stuff. It's definitely at the forefront of at least my intrigue, and I feel like a lot of people's intrigue around season two, more so than whatever Thrawn is doing. Like, I can wait to see what Thrawn's doing. I don't need to see that right away, but getting a chance to go to another galaxy seems like something that's really, really unique, and kind of unique to Dave Filoni in general. Like, it's his style of storytelling. So I want to see what he does with that. I don't want to have to constantly cut back to Hera talking to Mon Mothma or the senators in the New Republic, and Thrawn planning, training his troops. Like, I don't care about that stuff right now. I want to know what happens with Balin. I want to know what happens with Mortis. That's such a big seed to leave in the finale. I want to know all that stuff way more than I want to know anything about the New Republic and the Empire. So hopefully we get that. Anthony, YouTube fan, says, do you guys think there might be discussion on of the Zepho influences on Peridia? Will Jet get any mention? Will Ahsoka and Sabine venture to another planet in that new galaxy? I think they're going to stick to Peridia, but I do think Zepho will at least have more of a connection. Dave Filoni has been somebody who, oddly, in like Star Wars, not necessarily has given everything its own credence. Like, I know it's a big frustrating thing for a lot of Legends fans who feel like Clone Wars just kind of retconned a lot of things. I still tend to, blame George Lucas more for that, because it was his show. He was the head of it. Even though Dave Filoni was the one overseeing the whole show, George could have said, no, we don't need to do that, let's do this. He didn't. He was the one that was like, just run wild with it, who cares? So and Filoni's kind of taken that philosophy and run with it. We've seen retcon after retcon in some of Filoni's work, whether it be Tales of the Jedi or Rebels or Bad Batch. There's been a lot of things that he's been involved with that have had retcons for the larger Star Wars lore. And so I don't necessarily saying all that, I don't necessarily see him being like, yes, I want to devote entire scenes to Zepho and connecting all that. But it being involved in just the iconography and visuals around season one definitely makes me think that it will be at least that again. And maybe we could get some type of, if we do go through some like weird trippy realm, or they find some version of a like a Zepho style holocron, something that allows them to communicate with the past, we could get some type of cameo from Kujet or different things like that. But I don't know if he's really planning on making that a significant part of the plot, but hopefully at least has cameos or little mentions or moments.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think some of that just Peridia is just so unexplored, right? I think that one of the biggest criticisms that we have, even as fans of the shows, were like, okay, grandmothers are there. Like, okay, they've seen some really interesting connections be established with Dathomir. But it's almost like all of the most visually interesting stuff about Peridia was like the star map and everything before they even go to Peridia and some of the legends that the Jedi had and all that. And then you go there, it's pretty dry and gray. And yes, this is definitely a season that was shot heavily on the volume. I know that the budget for the show was much lower than some of the other ones that almost look worse, honestly. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough one for me because I do wanna say, like, yeah, we should get a better understanding of, like, where Purdia stands amongst this galaxy, like, what are some of its orbiting planets, orbiting what is its solar system that it's in and have an effect on, but Star Wars also kinda doesn't really care so much about that as a concept. I'd say, like, the biggest version of, like, caring about that is the Corellian system, which in Legends is completely artificial, like, the Celestials use center point and moved everything around. And that is a cool point, but it's almost kinda played down for like, "Hey, Anakin just figured out how to use some of the machinery here and move stuff around." Like, it's not even, like, an adult topic. It's not even, like, a big, like, oh, huge thing until closer to, like, the end of New Jedi, Drac and Sal Solo doing some idiotic stuff, right? So yeah, the concept of a solar system, not super huge in Star Wars. It's just the same way as, like, a lot of the original planets, original trilogy planets were just singular biomes that you kinda just be like, "Okay, this is a forest planet. This is a sand planet," right? So, I think we should start getting a little bit more variety, and we have been in, like, other shows like Andor and all that where and especially in animation, you always get to see stuff like that, but it's just not something that I don't think many Star Wars creators have much interest for, and if anything, it's something that should be handled more in books and everything because they have time. There's no limitations on budget. So, with how pretty it was depicted, with how much of it about the show was trying to say, like, Thrawn has been waiting for the chance to escape, and the moment he got it, he ran with it and all that. It's like, okay, great, but that doesn't mean that Perea just disappears. Now let's get into the weird and nitty-gritty what he might have been using to, like, supplement himself, he might have been using as a buffer against grandmothers. I mean, he doesn't have the Ysalamari like he does in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, so, like, is it just that he made a cool partnership with some old ladies, right? Like, I don't buy that. I think he's a guy who's way too smart to not have like, scavenged every single part of the galaxy or sorry, every single part of Peridea to not only just fix his ship, but also, like, prepare his dead soldiers and everything like that. So, yeah, I think he has countermeasures, and there's things that Ahsoka, Sabine, Shin, everybody else will kind of follow up on. There'll be definitely stuff that they will figure out. Will we see stuff like the Fallen Order, influences on Peridea with Kujet and all that? That seems more Easter egg-like. We also had that kinda pop up again in Atten. And now that we know that it's, something that has been connected to in the galaxy map as very close to Dathomir, maybe that is something that we do continue to see a little bit more of, but right now, it just kinda seems like a cool Easter egg that's kinda been repeated over a couple times that they if they have time for maybe that's something like Ahsoka and Sabine see in some ancient ruins while they're chasing down Balin or something, and get a better understanding of, but I don't know if it's gonna be, like, a huge driving force about, like, oh, the Zepho and everything. It might just be, like, an offhand sort of thing. But as far as, like, other planets and all that, we have a chance because I believe there has been rumors that, like, Justina Ireland, a couple High Republic authors are gonna be at Comic-Con, especially with a lot of the big studios having pulled out pretty recently, like, from Comic-Con in general. So it does seem like it's just gonna be whatever it can fill in, and rumors Zahn is also gonna be there, so maybe he is not necessarily doing a trilogy like we were hoping for, but at least maybe writing some books that are blending, his depiction of Thrawn, the Rebels' depiction of Thrawn, whatever Filoni's trying to amalgamate between them and, connect their way there. There was also some rumors from some people at a different panel that said that he told people like, "Hey, I was brought on as a consultant, but Filoni really doesn't talk to me about how he wants to handle Thrawn or anything anymore." So maybe that was just, misinterpretation. This is just more like, "Hey, we want you to focus on the book stuff, connect all that stuff, and then maybe in that gap between Rebels season 4 and where we catch up with Thrawn and Ezra and the start of Ahsoka, maybe we can understand a little bit more if there was a partnership, understand a little bit more about, like, what they're doing. Maybe they were able to explore different planets using just their sublight engines, right? Like, there could be a couple of cool ideas explored about just the Peridia system as a whole, and I think Zahn could handle that really well, especially because he's handled the Chiss and all their factions and everything going on in the unknown regions and all that, how ruling houses and all, and just the little Chiss space in general is pretty complicated as a whole. But is that something that can show up in the show with 8 episodes? Probably not. I think if anything, it's just more like a Zephyr offhand comment, and then another planet, hold your horses there. It'll be, like, stuff that we know in our main galaxy at best, and only because, like, you have characters who are trying to do recruiting or something from the New Republic side.
Well, that's why I don't think there will be another planet. I just think Pretty is too cool to explore on its own. You have the Mortis stuff set up there. Why go somewhere else? Like, I just think the show with the Thrawn plot, with the New Republic plot, where's there going to be time to planet hop? And I think it would be a mistake. Will we see it? It could happen, but would it be a mistake for the story? Probably. I feel like it would make it too fast paced. So yeah, but thanks for the question, Anthony. Let's move on to our second topic here. And I know this is not a Star Wars topic, but it concerns a lot of you, and a lot of you have been asking about it for months. So I thought we might as well just talk about it because I figured we'll have some questions about it anyways. That's Superman. Superman review drop today. Movie comes out for people. If you had the Amazon Prime, you were lucky enough to get a ticket to that. I didn't get a ticket because I'm sharing my Tuesday night with all of you, but a lot of people are getting to go tonight to see Superman for the first time. The rest of us will be going Thursday or Friday or whenever you get a chance to go this week. But the reviews did drop online and they're very, very good. I know a lot of you are huge fans of DC, and a lot of you have been asking us questions about DC for a while. So I want to run that down and just get Sonic's quick thoughts as well on it. But Superman currently sits with 140 reviews, and again, Rotten Tomatoes usually gets about 300 to 400 reviews. So this is not close to the final tally. Could go up 1 or 2%. Usually goes down about 1 or 2%, sitting with 140 reviews at 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. So very, very positive there. But I don't like looking at Rotten Tomatoes because it's very misleading. It's just if you gave it a 6 out of 10 or higher. So that's not really an indicative of the quality of the film itself. It's just saying people liked the movie. So let's jump over to Metacritic, which I think is a far better resource for looking at movie score. And it has a 71 out of 100, which might not sound great to a lot of people, but if you follow movie scores on Metacritic, that is actually very, very high for a movie of this style for a comic book movie. So, all around, pretty positive reviews for Superman. People just saying it's a lot of fun, really exciting, good throwback to the Christopher Reeves style era, but also kind of golden age comics, hopeful golden age, silver age comics. People just saying it's a really, really good time. I'm sure there will be haters out there, but as of now, the critics seem to really like Superman. And from what I've heard from audiences as well, people are really enjoying it. There's no real audience scores out there right now, as the movie has not yet come out fully. But seems like pretty much everybody who's seen Superman has at least liked it. And even on Metacritic, the highest score currently are about 5, 6 people gave it a 9 out of 10. Lowest scores 4 out of 10. No, negative reviews, as Metacritic would say, which is a 3 out of 10 or lower. Or really, it's a 3.9 out of 10 or lower is a negative review. A mixed review on Metacritic is a 4 to a 5.9 on that scale, and then anything from a 6 out of 10 or higher is considered a positive review on Metacritic. So pretty exciting news. I'm very excited for this. This is my most anticipated movie of the year by a long shot, and I've been really hyped for it all year. Very cautiously optimistic though, because of the history of DC and really the history of Superman movies since Superman 2 in 1981. So it's not been the smoothest sailing for Superman as a character, even as somebody like who likes Man of Steel. There are a lot of things I don't like about it, and I've been hoping for this type of film for a while. So I'm very excited to hear it's good. I've got my tickets for Thursday. Can't wait to go see it. Seneca, you hear the positive reviews for Superman. What are your thoughts?
Happy. That's the easiest way to put it up, right? But yeah, I mean, it's been weird tracking this film in general online because this is definitely one of the most, like, word of mouth heavy dependent films of the year. Like like you said, Superman has only, like, one supreme film, and it's the original, right? We've got some great cartoons, right? Fictions, some incredible runs in the comics. Obviously, he's the number 2, right, when it comes to all-time comic book sales, or maybe Spider-Man might be 2, but still, top 3 at minimum, right? And
Mhm.
of the holy trinity of DC, like Batman, him, and Wonder Woman, right? Like, you want these characters to have, like, great showings, and, until this film, it's kinda sad to say, but Wonder Woman had a film much better than a Superman film in the 21st century, right? So, again, we don't know exactly how it's like, but this definitely feels very similar to, like, last time this year when, a lot of the projections for Deadpool and Wolverine, people are like, "Yeah, it looks pretty good. It looks Sean Levy, like, he's done some Stranger Things, Night at the Museum, like, it could be fun, it could be good." But yeah, yeah, no, like, this hearing all the good things, just hearing Cornsworth in general, the way he's been talking about the film, talking about the character, James Gunn, obviously, like, yes, like, everybody's been saying the right thing, and I do like that they've leaned into, like, just the weird elements as a whole, like, Golden Age is filled with camp, but it's also filled with rich detail, and that's something that I think Man of Steel kinda really struggled with. They tried to do, like, Superman 1 and 2 in one film, but also then its whole 3rd act just is like a complete CGI fest of destroying everything, like, about, you know, gods who wanna be men and stuff like that. It's like, it just didn't feel like Superman once it comes in. Like, I don't really hate the decision about, like, killing Zod in that film. I just it just goes against the Superman that, is always trying to do right and what's good by people, and he's not really a character that ever also puts himself in a situation where he has to make something like that happen, like, he's usually pretty smart too, like, he's not just entirely reliant on his physical strength. So, seeing some, like, the creative use of his powers, like using his icy, like, wind breath just to push away a dog, right? Like, that's just not something that happened in Man of Steel, right? To this day, one of the things that infuriates me, and again, I don't think it's absolutely not Cavill. I think Cavill would've nailed it better with a much better like, script behind him and a director a little bit more focused on the character as opposed to just the visuals, like Zack Snyder, but in Batman versus Superman, when the courthouse is blown up and everything, and you just see him just, like, staring, like, that's not Superman. He could have used his super speed and, like, at least saved a good amount of them and done something or neutralized the bomb or something, right?
Mhm.
He just stands there, and that I think really broke down whatever, hope I had for the Cavill Superman. Everything I've been seeing clips-wise, just seeing everything, the Daily Planet and all that, very happy. Very, very happy, very excited. Um, I love Amy Adams, but she was not Lois Lane at all. She was a really big miscast. Like, she was better in Man of Steel, but by Batman versus Superman, I had no idea what they're doing there. Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy, like, Jimmy Olsen is actually a pretty big character, and he's pretty fun, and there's just so much fun elements about these characters that work so well once you put them in a room together that just had no breathing room or viability in the Snyderverse. So, uh, I'm still a little worried about just how much this film is trying to pack. Like, obviously, they got the Justice Gang with one version of Hawkgirl and Guy Gardner, and then, we have Mr. Fantastic, and, like, he's a very different type of hero with all his technology and everything. How is that gonna play off? Yeah, I can't say I'm not a little worried about just how much breathing room that Superman will have in his own film, especially with, like, this being a universe that already has superheroes, and he's considered one of the more younger, not, like, first lead superheroes. That is definitely gonna feel different. But as long as the heart of the character is there, and that's what all the reviews are saying, and, like, the humanity shines through, that's what matters to me. I can deal with funny, quirky visual styles and jokes and humor that don't land as well, or, like, action that doesn't seem just right, as long as, like, the man with the trunks truly feels like the character we saw in, like, Justice League and the animated series, right? So, that's that's what we've all were hoping for in the early 2010s. It didn't pan out that way. Again, if you love the Snyderverse, that's fine, that's great, that's your choice, but as someone who has seen enough Snyder films, above everything else, he can't make a 2-hour film. He can make 3-hour films, 4-hour films. When he made his, like, Star Wars, Seven Samurai kinda spin-off film that he wanted to pitch to Disney, and they said no, and they made it Netflix, and all the, like, his crew and everybody's like, "Yeah, this is better than everything Star Wars ever made." The dude had to make an extended, uncut, unrated version for something that has no limitations because it's on streaming, and I think that says a lot. Like, if you can't tell your story in a nice, like, theatrical format, that kinda hurts your reputation as a storyteller. Never gonna discredit his visionary, like, action, like, still Batfleck, and all the action in Batman versus Superman, great. I really did like all of that stuff. But as far as, like, a story, characters, I everything I've seen of Gunn, I've enjoyed quite a bit. I'm excited. I'm still a little worried it's gonna be a bit overstuffed, and there might be some things that don't land super well with me, but I got Liam to, like, correct me if I got something that I'm like, "That doesn't make sense. Why is that happening?" You'll be like, "This comic run, no, that was in this episode." I'll be like, "Alright, sweet, that's fine."
Yeah, I mean, I'm hyped. I don't think I've been this excited for a movie in a popular franchise since The Rise of Skywalker. Like it just I don't know, my since kind of COVID and the fall off of just blockbuster filmmaking, the like very mid blockbusters we've been getting since then, and also on top of that, just kind of the uncertainty around the film industry. People, greenlighting these movies, but then we don't see a sequel for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Like there's just this. It's hard to get excited when you don't have the constant pumping of good quality stuff. So I haven't gotten that excited over much of what Marvel's done recently. There's been a few things here and there, but DC's always been my bread and butter, and so having a Superman movie finally back, like even the Batman, I was very excited for that. But we had seen a lot of great Batman movies. We had seen a lot of good Batman stories. Like this is just exciting because I've wanted a great DC universe for a long time, and I'm just hoping that this can start a trend for DC. But yeah, definitely very hyped to see this, and I can't wait to see what Easter eggs are there, what groundwork's being laid for the future. This might, I used to be somebody who goes and sees movies I really like in theaters at least twice, sometimes 3 times, 4 times. I have not, can't remember the last time I've seen a movie more than twice in a theater or in the last 5, 6 years. And I definitely haven't seen too many movies twice. Like I saw Dune Part 2 twice. That deserved two viewings. I saw Spider-Man No Way Home twice, but I haven't seen too many movies twice in theater. So I'm excited for this. I can't wait. I hope it's something that makes me just instantly want to go back in the theater and rewatch it and have that fun again because that's a feeling I've definitely missed for a while. Really, it's been since Marvel was at their kind of peak and Star Wars still had some good movies coming out, and there was a lot of good times back then. So hoping for that more than anything. But what are your guys' thoughts on Superman reviews? Are you excited to see it? We have some comments about this in the chat. We have Permafrost Texas who says, or TX, who says, excited to see Superman this weekend. Who are your favorite non-core Justice League members, and which comics for them would you recommend? Oh, so I mean, I have a lot. It's kind of like I assume by core you kind of mean like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman. Outside of that, like outside of those people who are basically in all the Justice League comics, I would throw in one right off the bat. So my favorite Justice League run is Grant Morrison, and then transitioning into Mark Waid's Justice League from the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s. It's really, really great. And Kyle Rayner's a part of the Justice League there. Yeah, he's a Green Lantern, but he's one that nowadays people don't really talk about at all. And he was a really good Green Lantern. So I really liked his appearance there. Another main character from that run is Plastic Man, who has a lot of fun there. I would recommend, as for comics for Plastic Man, he does have a couple individual fun comics, and he was big in like the 50s and 60s. But I would just say read the Morrison Justice League. Like he's just a really fun side character there. He has a couple of good moments in the Justice League Unlimited TV show as well. Booster Gold, another character who's a lot of fun and is really fun in the Justice League Unlimited TV show. And he's also part of the, I believe he's a part of the Keith Giffen run. He shows up a little bit there with Blue Beetle. It's been a while since I've read that one, but that was good. Shazam used to be like a B tier character, and I always really liked Shazam. Now he's kind of popular because he had 2 movies, but I used to throw him in there. Green Arrow. I know you mentioned Green Arrow earlier, or later Permafrost. You said you read Grell's Green Arrow. That's the best Green Arrow to read. But Kevin Smith, actually, the filmmaker, Kevin Smith, wrote a really great Green Arrow run. Kevin Smith has been very hit and miss with comics. He's a huge comic fan, but you'll sometimes hear people say he's written their least favorite comics, and you'll also hear people say that he's written some of their best comics. Like he has some notoriously awful Batman comics, but he does have a great Daredevil run, and he has a great Green Arrow run. So definitely check those out. I'm trying to think who else. The Atom, maybe throw in the Atom. He's like Ant-Man, but for DC. I think he's one of the few DC characters who might have come after the Marvel version. I can't remember. You might have to fact check me on that. I feel like maybe he did come before. But yeah, Zatanna, Doctor Fate, Black Canary, those types of characters. A lot of great ones. I could list them forever. But yeah, I would be here all night.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't know the comic runs and everything, but I think uh, Batman the Brave and the Bold was a very fundamental part of my childhood. So
Great
a
show.
lot of Justice League characters continue there. It's very much inspired by Adam West's Batman and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many appearances he's had, say, in the Justice League, but I always was a fan of Red Tornado. Just a very
Yeah, yeah,
unique character, unique voice, and Corey Burton does the voicing, for that character, so it just got that huge stunner, and you're like, "Oh, okay, like, so important, maybe I should pay attention," sort of, right? So, yeah, I don't know, I liked him. I have read some Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern comics, but yeah, it's a bit, um sad,
90s.
that now he's kinda known as, like, the character behind the concept of bridging. Like, that's quite literally all he's known for, because he just hasn't they've introduced so many other lanterns since, right? And they've just kind of let him remain in the '90s for the most part, and it's not like he
Yeah.
can't come back, but it feels like he's all his best storytelling, from what I can tell, has just been stuck 30 years ago, and he's got one of the cooler, just like, it's not a very hugely, like, insane design for him as a Green Lantern compared to some of these more modern ones. It's just a mask, but it just works. It's just
Yeah.
pretty interesting in general. I don't know how many stories there are with Big Barda, but it's always a very interesting name and an interesting character anytime I've seen her, like, in the DCAU and everything. So, I'm curious to see how if she's got some great stories or not, but, yeah, those are, like, 2 names off the top of my head.
Yeah, Big Barda is one of the new gods. So, or
Interesting.
she's part of Darkseid's group. She's one of Darkseid's main. She's part of the female Furies, Darkseid's elite task force of female warriors, and that's when she falls in love with Mr. Miracle, who is
Ah, okay.
the he's the son of uh, the new gods. I'm blanking on the main character, the main god of the new gods, and they switch sons, Orion and Mister Miracle. Orion is Darkseid's son. He gives them to the new gods, and the new gods give their son, Mister Miracle, to Darkseid, and they're raised on different planets, and yeah, they've become a great little couple. Big Barda has a good she's good role in Mr. Miracle's iconic comic from Tom King. If you haven't checked that one out as well, guys, definitely check that one out. But yeah, there's so many good ones. It's hard. I love the Red Tornado shout too. That's a great like late '90s character, early 2000s, very much so used in like the early 2000s stuff too. Even in the lesser known Justice League runs, because some people didn't really like what. Oh God, I'm blanking on his name. I gotta look over here. uh Brad Meltzer did with Identity Crisis. There's a lot of people who really don't like Identity Crisis. I think the story is really good. I definitely think it's questionable about what morals they give the DC characters, but the story is compelling. Brad Meltzer started the next Justice League run, and then you got he has a good story with Red Tornado. It's called Tornado's Path. That's a good one as well. So yeah, definitely check a lot of those out. But thanks for the question, Permafrost. It's exciting time for DC. Hope you check some of those out. Then Permafrost says, I don't have much experience with DC Comics, but my favorite omnis I've read so far are Dini's Batman, Grell's Green Lantern or Green Arrow, and the 52 series. All of those are great. And Grell's Green Arrow is a seminal run for that character, and Dini's Batman's definitely underrated. So definitely good choices there. And if you're reading Dini's Batman, check out Morrison's Batman because they kind of crisscross because Dini was writing detective comics at that time. And if you aren't aware, there are two Batman titles that are always out. There's Detective Comics, which is where Batman originally appeared, and then there's just the title called Batman. And so Morrison was writing Batman, Dini was writing Detective Comics. So there's some great ones there. Definitely worth checking out the Morrison run as well. Although Morrison is I wouldn't say he's controversial, but he's a lot of comic readers' favorite authors. He's one of comic readers' favorite authors, but he's not necessarily beginner friendly. He's very much so like addicted to diving into the past and trying to make sense of things that happened in the 40s and 50s and like pull them back into his timelines. And so his Batman is very much so like this just amalgamation of weird things from the 50s stuff that they were doing. Like he makes Batmite a character again and all this stuff. So it's a hard one to read if you don't know your Batman, but it's still a really good run. Let's see here. We have anybody else on Superman? Brandon Tran says, okay, we'll talk about that one actually after. I'm specifically talking about Guns Superman here, and then we'll jump back to the start because we are running out of time. Again, this is a shorter stream tonight, everybody. So if you have some questions, if you have some things you'd like to get in, send it in now so we can try to get to all of them. I think that's pretty much everything. Anthony, YouTube fan, says, I'll be seeing Superman this weekend. Looking forward to it. I'll be wearing my new black and silver S shirt. That's very cool. Glad you have one of those Resurrection Superman shirts. Brandon Tran says, me too. Superman 2 is one of the coolest Superman movies. James Gunn has definitely created the incredible hype. And then Permafrost says, my sisters are only seeing it with me because of Crypto's in it. I think a lot of people are going to be there for Crypto for sure. He's a huge selling point. A lot of the great clips, like even that one clip they released where Superman stops the big kaiju monster from stomping on a dog, like that's a really fun clip as well.
Yeah, definitely, and, like, obviously, there was that one, like I don't it's not really a preview, but it was in the theaters with Minecraft, so everybody got to see him kinda crash near the Fortress of Solitude, have Crypto kinda, like, jump on him, and you can hear, like, crunching of, like, his bones breaking, you're like, "Oh god." But, like, that canonically, Crypto is kind of that guy, and, it's just
Yeah.
yeah, just he's a lot. He's definitely a lot. I know there are some people complaining he doesn't look like a Dalmatian without spots or whatever that breed is, but, like, that doesn't I don't know, as long as he's like a white-haired dog, that's all that really kinda
Yeah.
matters, right? And it's more the personality of the dog, like, a lot of that kinda came down to, like, when you saw all those, like, direct-to-DVD films from, like, the late '90s, early 2000s, where animation was, like, even cheaper than what we saw, and, like, especially, uh, the Bruce Timm era of animation, like, stylized and hard lines it was, like, it obviously translated to the animals as well, so, I don't know. I mean, I know the comics have, like, a little bit of, like, up and down. Yes, Ace would be nice to see. Unfortunately, the Ace that we got in that, like, one weird DC Super dog, Super Pets movie was just oh
Yeah.
god. I saw that trailer and was very just, "No, it's definitely not. That's not happening." But, yeah, Kevin Hart too, like, oh god, like, of all characters. But, yeah, no, I mean, I what is it? There was also that scene, like, when they're walking back in the Fortress of Solitude for another time, and you just see, like, Superman be like, "What the hey, dude? Like, what is this? Like, what you
Yeah.
trashed the whole place." Like, that dynamic too, like, I that's exactly what I was hoping to see, and, yeah, all this and everything you've seen with Luther being like, ugly dog with a cape? What? I didn't say nothing," right? Like, that's I think all those clips, they really are playing off of how social media and, like, short form content is very animal oriented on the internet, so they have really they've been very smart about their marketing here. I mean, they've obviously spent a lot of money on it, like, it does feel like it's one of the bigger, like, marketing pushes in a while, but I think some of the targeted marketing a little early on, I think they were pretty smart about, like, just general trends that, like, Generation Z, Generation A is kinda more skewed towards, and I think that's what's really getting people all
Mhm.
excited for that, right? So, playing off of, like, just seeing vertical format videos and stuff that we the type of videos from there, and then seeing that connectivity with what can be shown in the movie, what the Golden Age has to offer in DC around Superman as a character, really smart choices.
Yeah, definitely. They're really going in on that this has something for everybody. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really smart strategy. So pretty cool to see. All right, we'll jump back to the top of the comments. And again, like I said at the beginning of the video, this is going to be a shorter stream. We are going to cut off about 8:20-ish. So make sure you guys send in your last questions. And again, super chat is the way to bump your question up to the top if you want to get one in on tonight's stream. And make sure you join us tomorrow for our High Republic recap and retrospective. Critical Thinker starts off the chat tonight and says, if they ever do the Grisk invasion story, let's say in the New Republic era, how would you make it different in concept from New Jedi Order, even if the events were obviously different? The similar premise invites comparisons. Sorry, and in new canon, you can't go as big as you can in Legends, so it just seems doomed to be a lesser version. How would you keep it from being a retread of the New Jedi Order, but smaller scale with less impact? Well, I don't think it inherently has to be smaller because the main reason Legends was always bigger is because there were no stories to bookend it, right? So you could just do whatever you wanted. Right now, the unfortunate thing about canon is if you're going to do that type of story between what we're seeing with Thrawn right now in New Republic era and the sequels, now you have a bookend. Now you know where Luke ends up. Now you know where Ben Solo ends up. Now you know where Han and Leia and Lando and all these characters end up, right? So that's the difficult part about canon that might make it, for a lack of a better word, smaller. But I still think the effects and like the really the impact it has on the galaxy could definitely be felt into the sequels if you wanted it to. It could still be a big conflict. The way you make it gigantic is to do it after the sequels. I don't know if they would do that, maybe, but because technically New Jedi Order is, it would take place, you would be able to finish the entirety of it in the timeline prior to the sequels if you wanted to. It would The only thing it would contradict a little bit is when Ben Solo turns to the dark side. So like you'd have to
Yeah.
maybe move it up a few years if you wanted to do almost the exact same thing. But right off the bat, the Grisks and the Yuuzhan Vong are really different, just purely because like when you read Thrawn Ascendancy, the Grisks don't have the same. They're a warrior like species. They're very similar in that regard. They're extra galactic, all of that similar, but they don't have the inherent aversion to technology and like all that type of stuff that the Yuuzhan Vong have. So right off the bat, there's like fundamental reasons for why they would invade differences. And I think within that, you could have maybe a little bit more straightforward story. But I think, a lot of the things the Yuuzhan Vong did were related to trying to like the Jason Solo seduction and the capture of Jason Solo. You have all these different plot elements that are a little bit more intertwined with understanding the Jedi and understanding the Force and the connection to the living world and all of the different things around that. Whereas how they've kind of set up the risks right now, it would be more so just like this invasion of unbelievable force of powerful beings that the galaxy has never really seen before, you know. And so I think right off the bat you could come up with more reasons for the Grisks that are very different from the Vong, to where yes, one to one they'd be similar in terms of extragalactic species invading our galaxy, our main galaxy, but fundamentally their purpose for doing so could be extremely different. And so I think that's how you make it not feel like New Jedi Order at first. But I think the things that New Jedi Order does really well with that you absolutely have to capitalize on, one, giving arcs for all of our main characters, and two, that could be a great place to give really important storytelling for Ben Solo slash Kylo Ren. It could also help tie into why Luke sees the darkness in him, starts to see the darkness in him over time. Some of the connections to, you know, the way the Vong and Vergir change Ben Solo and all of that type of stuff. You can pull some ideas from that and some elements to that and bring it into Ben Solo's story. And I think inherently it makes him more interesting. And New Jedi Order does a great job of, while there are Luke books and while Luke, Leia, and Han are still kind of the main characters, they are like A characters to where their kids are right there. The Solo twins and Anakin, they're like 1A, 1B characters. You know, they're very important to the stories and they have their own books as well. So I think that's the thing that you pull from that initiative and you would do very closely with that is try to build Ben Solo and build who he is and really build out Luke's Jedi Order and really try to make that the purpose of the story rather than the Yuuzhan Vong stuff slash Grisk stuff. Like that's more of the backdrop for the characters. And I think that's something you could pull from the stories. But inherently, the Grisks are always already so different from the Vong that I think on the surface it would be a very different style of storytelling no matter what.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts. I agree with what Liam's saying. Inherently, it doesn't have to be smaller. Obviously, there's gonna be budget restrictions because I really doubt they would just save the Chris for books if they really wanna make, like, an invasion storyline. That's one of the things that you almost have to commend New Jedi Order for because they did such a hugely expansive adult book series, and then years later, they finally have, like, New Jedi Order Invasion comic miniseries come out that kind of works as a prelude, and you can only wonder, like, what would have been like if it's more multimedia, what stories would have been kinda shifted more
Yeah.
into comics, games, and stuff like that, right? And, maybe the books didn't make that conflict don't feel as big, right? There was definitely a lot of notes made midway through the series because there was gonna be a whole other Nightfall trilogy and everything that would have been delving a little bit more into just some of the crazier, darker elements of the Vong, and everybody was like, "Yeah, these are good books, like, these are well received, selling well," but it's starting to get a little too dark, right? So it seems like we're just getting too much into the devastation of the galaxy, this is not really the hope that was originally part of Star Wars, so I think no matter what, that lesson was gonna always be applied to the Grisk invasion story, that was gonna be as extreme because the Vong were gonna be even more extreme, and they pulled back too. We know that as a fact. So I think that's is always gonna be the case. It would be interesting if this was, like, kinda played out like how the High Republic is, where this is mostly a Jedi-centered conflict. There can definitely be devastation, but maybe it's more devastation around the Outer Rim, the unknown regions, and I don't know, like, that also kinda repeats a lot of, like, the High Republic where everything that has been set up, especially with Trials of the Jedi of, like, oh, the things like Separatists and everything kinda build off of, like, some of these seeds that were planted by the Nihilin, and they're, like, take over with the occlusion zone and everything. Doing that sort of again, I don't know, 'cause, one thing that New Jedi Order set up really well is, like, fundamentally, society was gonna change, governments were gonna change, everything's gonna change. It just so happened to be that all the following series kinda just ignored how much devastation and all that, kinda wrapped it up, kinda hand waved it off, and then kinda did whatever they wanted to, especially by the time we reached Fate of the Jedi. If we do something here between episode 6 and okay, well, not episode 6, between the end of the Mandoverse and everything leading into sequel era, right? Like, yeah, it could work. The timeline is there. It would definitely be more heavily skewed on a singular solo child in 3, right? how much can you really push? How much of Palpatine's influence is gonna be here? Are the Grists just gonna be kinda like the front-facing players while other players are gonna start pulling the strings? That was one thing that we all had, like, some serious consideration about with the Nile and everything with the High Republic, and, like, are these characters that are actually being influenced by the Sith and all that? And ultimately, not really, but maybe that's something you can do here, and then the question then becomes like, "Okay, are you limiting this big invasion force? Are you making them just puppets of a bigger plan and all that?" So that's some of my kinda worries I have, especially with that gap. I think it'd be fundamentally great for Ben Solo because I think it'd be great to see how much he struggles, not just with the voices in his head, but what he's developed into, some of these Jedi that come and go, some of these Order 66 survivors that join and then maybe die off in this conflict, some who, like, abandon entirely the Jedi way and kinda go back to how they were living before with the path and everything. Like, there could be some very again, I've always said that with how canon set up Luke's order, the richer storytelling will be more about the philosophical choices that are going on as opposed to, like, here's a war, here's a war, here's a war, or just, like, big ambassadors, but also like marshals of a very expanding, very quickly expanding New Republic. That's not happening in canon per se, especially not with how the government's been structured. So seeing how Luke works with like, oh, I know how the prequel Jedi were like. We didn't know this by the end of the New Jedi Order. What Order 66 was like, and all that. Working with like the legacy and weight of the prequel Jedi, how it affected his father, seeing a little bit more of the High Republic Jedi, all that. I think there's gonna be some very difficult choices he's gonna make, and some of the fundamentalism that he might have and the contradictions that he's gonna live with and how that will then shape, like, his actions, kinda like how in New Jedi Order at first he's like, "Whoa, we cannot become involved in this fight against the Vong because we might make it darker and become way twisted." Like, that stuff still absolutely can happen. Will it be a little bit more smart scaled? Sure. And honestly, it might not even happen in our main galaxy. That's the nice avenue that the Ahsoka show allows, that this might be like them going to Peridia, them using the ancient ways or, like, finding a massive hyperspace ring and going there, and, maybe it's part of Luke is like, "I have to p stay behind and protect and take care, like, raise the next generation." Some of you guys that have trained, some of these Order 66 survivors, maybe this is your opportunity to go there and kinda deal with the stuff that began with Thrawn, that Thrawn was himself fighting against to some degree, that's actually starting off and actually just a precursor to something even bigger in a different galaxy. Like, you can do this story and not have it be in the main Star Wars galaxy and still work in that timeline. So I think that absolutely is an opportunity there. But I would also absolutely love it to be set post Episode 9 so you can have Finn and you can be a little that militant Jedi and deal with not just First Order and, like, their uprisings, but maybe the Final Order and kinda clarifying stuff there and how these Sith troopers work, like, and how all that big amalgamation might, like, deal with the big invasion force. Obviously, what Rey's doing with her Jedi Order, that's gonna be pretty important. Other characters in canon who are gonna be older than her might start showing up then. What is Grogu's role? What is the Mandalorian's role? Because, again, they are MIA in the sequel trilogy, especially with how big they're built up right here. A lot of different things you can do that can just start pinpointing by the end of episode 9 and that when everything, the rehash of the sequels of, like, Palpatine kinda trying to make a big grab and trying to redo his original plan, and once that falls apart, all these other players that have been kind of kept, in the dark or kind of been held back and all that, how does it kind of explode in this galaxy that hopefully societally fundamentally changes, like, different governments, different parts of the galaxy might work together, might not, like, whatever happens with the Grysk, they should come in and only make things harder for what should already be a galaxy that has no interest in being super unified anymore. So I'd love to see what happens post episode 9 because that then brings that scale that you are talking about critical thinker that yes, the wrong story ultimately will have whatever in comparison to whatever the Grisk is story is gonna lead into, but can it still work in that gap that we have between Mandoverse and episode 7? Absolutely. It's just the placement of it might be in a different galaxy if you really wanna, like, kinda manage the scale of it while still having influence on the characters that are still around by the sequels.
Critical Thinker's next thought is thoughts on DC Rebirth Initiative. I thought it was a great comeback for the DC brand from New 52 and welcome the reintroduction of post crisis elements and dynamics. The books were also very good. I agree with you. I liked Rebirth. I think when Rebirth came out, that was probably the single most invested I ever was in new issue superhero comics because it's always been difficult, obviously, with how expensive they are to keep up with new issue comics as they're coming out for like every title. You have to pick and choose which ones you want. And so for me, that was maybe the only time in my life for about a year I was buying basically every single DC book that was coming out every single week. Like I was just hooked, I was obsessed, and I wanted to read it all. So I read pretty much every main title for the first volume of their Rebirth runs. The only ones I stayed on were Superman. I thought Superman was very, very good. I liked the Action Comics quite a bit. I loved Batman for a while. It started to run out of steam towards the end, but I loved what Tom King did with the first 50 issues or so of Batman. Detective Comics was very good. There were a lot of really good runs. So I'm with you, Critical Thinker. I thought it was a great bounce back. That DC Rebirth issue number one that kind of kicked everything off, that big oversized like 100-page issue, that was so so good, and that was very exciting. I think the only thing that overall was a little bit disappointing were the events that were coming out from that. Like Rebirth itself was really nice, but as it started to get going, like Doomsday Clock and the connection to Dr. Manhattan and all that type of stuff, it just took so long to come out. By the time it was over, it was kind of not underwhelming as a story, but, like, it felt like we kinda moved on. Like, it wasn't necessarily as closely tied to what Rebirth originally was, when it was starting, and so that to me was one of my big disappointments overall, was just the lack of, like a lack of follow-up on that initial idea of Rebirth, like, the stuff with the button and the flash and, like, all that stuff, like, all that was really interesting. I was really intrigued to see how they would tie it into Watchmen, and they kind of just they did a Doomsday Clock is a very very good book, but it's just it lasted too long. So that was my only negative. But overall, I thought it was a nice refresh. I liked what they did, bringing back Wally and all that stuff. They do kind of kill it with Heroes in Crisis, but unfortunately, some of the stuff they followed up with towards the end of Rebirth, moving on to their next phase, was a little disappointing. Critical Thinker says, personally, really disliked King's Batman even early on. Definitely the weakest link of the Rebirth books, in my opinion. Wow, that I disagree. Weakest link of all of them, completely disagree. Maybe of the big three, I can see it. Um, but I thought his first arc wasn't that great, but I thought it built and got better and better. One thing I will agree with you on is that King's Batman, the arcs themselves were never amazing. It was the individual stories he would tell. Like there were a couple dual issues with Batman and Superman, and there it was. I think they were called Super Friends, and I thought those were great. Like there were a lot of things that King fundamentally understood about the early days and like what is fundamentally Batman and what fundamentally Superman. Like I thought he got a lot of stuff like that right. The one thing I would give you and a lot of people who don't like King is that I don't think there are too many seminal stories that came out of his run in terms of like if you're going to buy a trade paperback, you got to get this one. There weren't too many. I liked the War of Jokes and Riddles. I liked the third volume of I'm forgetting what it was called. Third volume of his run. And I ultimately liked some of the stuff building into the wedding and that one volume right after the wedding. But I thought it fell off really hard at the end. So I agree with you that it fell off, that it's not good at the end. But I disagree that it wasn't, that it was the worst or the weakest link of the Rebirth books. I thought it was very, very good when it was at its peak. um, all right. Next we have Permafrost TX, who says, "Evening guys. Did you see they're releasing a Hidden Empire omnibus next year? Happy fans of those comics are getting an omni, but it frustrates me every time they get a release of a new omni that isn't Republic or Legacy. Which do you think would be released first? I think Republic is more likely because it's longer and has a more dedicated fan base, but people could be Clone Wars out after so much material has been released, so Legacy may be the way to go." I'm with you, Permafrost, especially Hidden Empire is a ridiculous one to make an omnibus for. I did not see that they were releasing that, but I think it's absurd because it doesn't even have any tie-ins. So what are they going to do? Like I don't know. As an omnibus collector, I don't get excited for event or for Star Wars event omnibus. Like, just release the Charles Soule's Star Wars and then have the War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, and Hidden Empire stuff in it. And same with Greg Pak, Darth Vader. And they are releasing the next set of Afra books, and they're not calling it Dr. Afra Volume 3, they're calling it something else. But it is there Afra is getting a third omnibus, luckily. But yeah, I just really don't understand Hidden Empire. At least Crimson Reign had some tie-ins, but they didn't have tie-ins that really actually tied into the event. It was just kind of loosely around like, oh, Crimson Dawn conflict, like it wasn't something that was right there with the event. So I think it's absurd. And I'm with you that I think Republic would be first, but I think it's more so because of the Clone Wars. Like, I just think it's shocking that they haven't made a Clone Wars omnibus, and it's also shocking that the Epic collections for Clone Wars are by far some of the hardest ones to find now. They haven't reprinted them in years, and you would think just with the popularity of the title Clone Wars, even if it doesn't connect to the 3D animated show, you would think that that would be just a no-brainer constantly reprint because people love the Clone Wars. So I'm at a loss for words just as much as you are. I don't understand why they haven't done that yet. And Legacy would be an easy one as well because it's all together. So you could create two omnibus of Legacy, put them both out, and the series is over. Whereas Republic, I feel like the only reason they haven't done Republic is because it would probably be at least 3 or 4 omnibus long if they did Republic. What I could see them doing though before both of these is just Clone Wars and only doing Clone Wars, and then the rest of Republic will probably either get forgotten or eventually maybe they'll do a Rise of the Sith omnibus, or not Rise of the Sith. Um, is that what they call it? The Menace Revealed. That's what they
Yeah,
call that
that's
timeline. So maybe they'll do one of those one day, but those ones haven't sold that well. Like, they've had volume 3 and 4 of those in stock forever. People haven't really bought them in terms of epics. So I don't know if we'll ever get that, but I think they'll do a Clone Wars one at some point someday. It's just shocking they haven't yet.
yeah, I mean, I kept up with all the comics when they're coming out, so seeing how War of the Bounty Hunters was super well connected was cool, but it was just way too overextended. Crimson Reign was probably the most balanced. It's just I never cared too much about that miniseries, the main series, but I could understand why, right? You're like, okay, that still matters how that's impacting, especially like the Vader series and everything. But Hidden Empire's got nothing, nothing, right? And that was such a strange thing to have not already been included in something else, right? Coming out with its own Omni right now. I guess maybe they're just trying to wrap up that whole era and just focus heavily on the 2025 Star Wars reboot and everything, and maybe just say like, "Okay, we've given you that one, and then Hidden Empire will never get a reprint." I can understand that, but yeah, like, there is a lot of Legends comics that have been waiting, like Republic, that to get out, right? To get that perfect omnibus, especially with just how scarce the market has been, so I don't understand it. I don't see it myself, like, why this has to be prioritized with, Hidden Empire not being so long ago that you wouldn't, like, be upset by just having it in just a trade paperback form, but, it is what it is. I don't fully ever understand what Marvel's doing. I don't think Marvel does in general with a lot of their comics right now, so, yeah, not terribly surprised. It is just what it is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because like you're saying, Permafrost, I think they are sitting on a gold mine. I mean, Star Wars, I know Star Wars aren't their best sellers when it compares to the superhero comics, but they make so many random ones like Hidden Empire, and you just go, who is buying this? Like, who is buying a Hidden Empire omnibus 2 years, 3 years after it came out? War of the Bounty Hunters at least came out within like the same year that that comic came out. This has been at least 2 years since Hidden Empire came out, and it's been, who's buying this now? Who didn't already read the paperback and hasn't already read the tie-ins? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, we're gonna have to wrap it up there tonight, guys. We have to get off early, but thank you so much for watching the stream tonight. Make sure you join us again tomorrow for the High Republic retrospective, and then we'll be back again next week for all your questions. So make sure you save the questions that we get answered tonight, bring them back for next week, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. Should be back to a full stream tomorrow. And then, of course, Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Hit that like button. More people are watching right now than have hit the like button. That's the best way to show your support is to like and subscribe. Comment below if you are watching this for the first time on replay. Make sure you check out Patreon, YouTube members. Those are the ways you can get priority chat access on top of super chats. So if you would like priority chat access without paying for super chat, you can pay the 1 time per month fee and join our Patreon and YouTube membership programs. Make sure you check out all the other great content we have going tonight or throughout the rest of the week. We have shorts coming out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We have videos coming out Monday, Friday, and we do have polls twice a day, every single day. Thank you so much for watching tonight's stream, everybody, and we will see you all next time.